The button drop-down component is really, really simple at its core. However, there's so many little bits and pieces that you can do with it that this is probably going to turn out to be quite a long video. But just know that the stuff I'm going to show you in the beginning covers most of what you'll actually need for the Q button drop-down. So let's say Quasar new page components / Q button drop-down page. We go ahead and create that. Q button drop down, and now we're ready to get started. Q button drop down. Let's begin with the most basic of examples. Q button drop down. Anything inside of this component is going to be shown when the Q button drop down button is clicked. So this is a button that will load a menu with anything inside of this component. I'll show you what I mean. Q list. And let's throw an item in there. And then inside that, we'll throw in an item section. And let's put in the words menu item, just as an example here. And we'll give this button a label called menu. Save that. Here's our button. Notice that we've got this little icon on the right here as well. And if I click on that, it shows us our menu. Simple as that. So as I kind of mentioned before, this is a Q button and it's a drop-down as well, meaning it actually takes in all of QButton's API. At least to the best of my knowledge, it's got basically everything that the Q button can do. So I'll show you a couple of examples. We can change the color to indigo, and that's going to work. We can set the icon equal to group. A lot of the stuff you'll usually see in the Q button. We can throw it on the other side. All that kind of stuff is available to us, which is good to know. Sometimes you'll actually want the button on the left to be different to the menu button. So if we put the word split in here, it splits them up. So this button is now separate from the menu button. And that opens up a couple of new things to our API, like disable main button. So that's going to disable this button here, but not the menu button. And then, of course, you can also say disable drop down. And now that one's disabled. And I just want to point out quickly as well, if we say @click here, handle click, and I'm going to throw in a method down the bottom here, handle click, console.log clicked. Let's open up our console and clear it. Note that whenever I click this menu button, it does not trigger the click event, which is what we want. We want these two buttons to be separate. However, if I click on the menu button, it does trigger the click event. So that's really handy to know and something that you might need to use in the future. Now let's add to the item clickable, just so it sort of gives us that clicky feeling. And notice that when we click it, it does not hide the menu. What we could do here is we could say v-close-pop-up, save it. And now when we click on it, it will close the pop-up. And that's a universal thing in Quasar. If you ever put v-close-pop-up on something that is a pop-up, then it will close. So you can use this kind of all over the place with different components with Quasar. However, we actually get a simpler way of doing this. We can come up here to the Q button dropdown itself and say auto-close. Save that. And now it's automatically going to do that for us. So we don't need to use the directive. So that's nice to know. What else can we do? Well, we've also got persistent. So if I come down here and say persistent, save it. If I open the menu and then click all over the app, nothing's going to happen. It will still show that item. And you need to either click on an item or click on this button here to hide it. And let me just prove that by getting rid of persistent now. And now when you click away, it will close the menu item. The other thing we can do is say, hey, if I change the route and this component is still on the page, do not hide the menu item. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's put on here a 2. So when we click on this button, it's going to take us to /btn/dropdown. So this current route here, but then I'll also say /subroute. So maybe you've got a subroute that will then open something else on the page. We'll now have to create a route for that. So let's come into our routes here, copy that down, and I've got the name of the page here. So I'm just going to be sneaky and copy that, paste it in, and I believe it was Q button drop down, and then we'll add on top of that, I think it was slash subroute. All right, what have I done wrong here? Pages slash components, because we ended up putting them in a subdirectory. So now when I click on this, it takes me to this subroute, but it looks like that route doesn't exist. And that's because I've put the route in wrong. Get rid of that slash there. Try it again. And the other thing I did wrong is if we come back to the routes, we need to get rid of that Q over there. Save that and try it again. And there we go. So that's actually taking us to a subroute. Let me open this up a little bit more, and I'll hide the console. And I promise there's a point to all this. So if we click on back, notice that clicking on that item takes us to a subroute. And it will also hide the menu item when I click on it. So if we come back here, and now we say, no route dismissed. Now let's get rid of persistent and auto close. Save it. And let's go back to our original route here. Open this up. And now if we click on the menu item, notice that the item did not disappear when I clicked on it, but we went to the new route. So now if I go back and I get rid of this, save it, it takes us to the new route and it closes the menu item. So that's a very specific thing that you may need in some scenarios. So maybe you want to make it so that when you click on one of those items, it changes something in a menu, and they want a quick glance at that. So you'll keep the menu item, you'll keep the menu open so that they can click through them and see, glances of content. That's just one example I can think of. But honestly, I've never used no route dismiss before, but it gives us a little bit more control over that. What else can we do? Well, we can make it so we change this icon. So we could say drop down icon. So the icon that triggers the drop down, and let's set that to app. And I think it might be plural, apps. Yeah, there we go. And that gives us that apps icon. You know how sometimes in Google, you've got that apps icon on the top left and it will show you all of Google's apps that are available to you? This could be something like that. You click on it and it shows you all of the apps. However, notice how it spins. You might not want it to do that anymore. So in this scenario, you could say no-icon-animation. And it's just going to stop it from spinning around, which is cool. What else? Well, behind the scenes, we've actually got a wrapper for whatever is sitting inside the Q button dropdown. I'll show you what I mean. So if I come down here, open the menu, and we go to grab this here. In fact, let's make this full screen so it's easier to see. Here we go. We come up here. There we go. So this is actually a wrapper around our QList component. So this is a wrapper created by the drop-down component, and sitting inside it is the actual list item. So that's the list component that we created. And notice that we get a whole bunch of styles out of the box. So this is all the stuff that Quasar is doing behind the scenes to make sure that it displays nicely for us. However, if we want to have a little bit more control, we can tap into this component here. And this is something more advanced that you honestly might not do unless you have a very specific situation. But I'll just show you how that works anyway. We can do that by saying content style, and that's how we tap into the sort of ghost wrapper that's going to be sitting in there. And we can say here, for example, background-orange. Save that. Oh, sorry, this is a style tag. So we'd have to say background orange. And there we go. That applies styles to the wrapper div itself. And also we can come in here and say content class, and that's the same thing but for classes. So we could say background-orange. Save it, and that works as well. However, honestly, in reality, you probably wouldn't do that in this scenario. If you wanted the background to be orange, you'd come into the Q item and you'd say class equals background, let's say indigo-2. Yeah. So you do it there inside the Q item or inside of the Q list like that in this scenario. And that's a lot of the API, but let's go into actually building some stuff with the dropdown. I want to start with a basic example. How about this? We'll call this one And then we'll copy down all of these items just so you get an idea of what it could look like. 2 and 3. So we've just got 3 items there. And there we go, 1, 2, and 3. But in reality, I'd probably want to do this programmatically. So let's get rid of all of that. So we've only got 1 item there. Cool. And we'll come down here, create a data property. And inside that, we will have menu items. And that's going to be an array with some objects in it. And we'll give it a label for our menu item. And how about we make it so these menu items take us to different places within our app? So Ajax bar and avatar and badge. So we'll call this one Ajax bar. And let's create another one that's called avatar. And then one for badge. Avatar. Badge. And then we'll also add some 2 links here. So 2 Ajax bar. And then this one's going to be avatar and this one's going to be badge. All right, so we have some menu items that we can have a play around with now. Let's have some fun with this. How about v-4 equals item in menu items? We can set the key equal to the item's label, because in this scenario, that's going to be unique. And let's throw the label directly in here. Item.label, save it. And there we go, the labels are showing up. And we can also turn these into links as well by saying to, and that's equal to item.to. And that's not working because I've done something wrong. We probably want to put a slash in there before all of these 2 links. There we go. All right, so that's working now. Just a quick example of how you might actually use this in the real world. All right, nice. What else can we do? Well, how about we put some more sections in here? So let's have a section there and a section here. And this one can be an avatar section. By the way, if it's got the word avatar there, that's the same as saying side. So it's going to say side, and it's going to give it some avatar styling as well. All right, so that's a good thing to know. And let's go back to that avatar page and just copy paste this in there. Now, if you don't have the avatar page because you jumped to this from, if you're not doing the whole thing in order, then I'll show you what you can do. Rather than writing that entire thing in, which would just be annoying, you can get rid of the image and put, for example, the first letter of your name. And if I come in here now, it's got an L, but I want to go back to that image with the avatar. There we go. So we've got that in there. What else can we do? Let's come down here to the section on the right, and we'll put an icon in there. So we'll make this a side item. And we'll say Q-icon. And what can I put in here? How about a school icon? Because we're learning about stuff. And we'll set the color to light blue. There we go. So just an example of menu items. Let's come back in here and make this a letter. I think it'll look better. Yep. And they all work. So that's just a really cool example of how you can quickly create drop-down menus using Q button drop-down. Oh, and one more thing. Within an item section, if you've just got one label here, it might be a good idea to say Q-item-label like that and throw it in there. It just adds a little bit of extra styling to make it look nice. Yeah, there we go. Refresh the page. And that looks good to me. And just to show you the flexibility, I found this really cool example in the docs, and I've kind of riffed on that idea. And so let's go ahead and have a play with that idea that's sitting in the docs. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry, you'll know what I'm talking about in a second. Get rid of all of that. And let's just have some fun here. So how about we put in a div? We'll use Emmet here. Div, and it will be a row, and it's going to be no wrap because I don't want the content to wrap around in this component. And what we can do now is just put in a couple of columns. We'll call that a column, and I'm just going to paste that down, and this will be the one on the left side, and that will be the one on the right side. Let's go ahead and see if that works. There we go, left and right. Looks a bit silly to begin with, so let's add some padding in here. padding or is equal to medium. I'll copy that and whack it in there as well. They'll have the same padding. And how about we put a divider in here? So we can say Q dash separator. And usually this is horizontal, but in this example, I want it to be a vertical divider in the center there. So we can say here, vertical. Save that. Let's just see what that looks like. All right, that's pretty cool for a start. And what I'm imagining is what I saw in the docs is this was like a settings for a user account. And on the right side, it showed you the avatar of the person. And there was also a logout button as well. In fact, I'll just dive right in and show you what it looks like. So let's put a div in here and say text-h6. See what that looks like. I think h6 should be good. And call that settings. So there we go. We've got a settings heading there. Come down. What else? We can put in a Q-toggle. And in this example, this is going to be something that turns Bluetooth on and off. So Bluetooth for the label. And let's put in a value of true. So usually this would obviously be modeling something. We'll just set it to true for now. And I want it to be a little bit further away from the settings menu. So let's just put some margin on the top there, small. Yeah, there we go. So there's one of the settings. And let's just copy paste that down. Maybe get rid of the margining on the top and have another setting here. Maybe this is a peer offline. So you can toggle yourself offline or online using that for like a chat app or something. And let's see what that looks like. All right, I reckon that's looking pretty good. And on the right side, we'll have an avatar. So let's come down here and cross that out. Once again, I'm going to cheat and grab that picture of Aang. So let's go to our avatar page and just copy this. Whack it in there. And like I said before, you can get rid of image and change that to a letter like L or whatever your first name is. Save that. All right, this is starting to look good. What else can we do? I probably want everything here to be centered because I'm imagining like the name there and the button centered. So how about we say items-center there? And what else? How about under here we have some text like avatar? All right, that's looking good. Come down here and we'll have a logout button, Q-button. And I'll set the label there to logout. And by default, everything is going to be capitalized. So that's like a big logout button. I want to make this lowercase because we don't want people leaving our app. So we'll say no caps, so they're less likely to log out. And then we'll make it a push button. I think that's it. Yeah, maybe I'll change the size. Let's make it smaller. I don't want to spend too long on this. And maybe Q, margin top of small. Just to separate it out a little bit. Yeah, all right. I reckon that looks pretty good. How cool is that? So using Quasar, once you get really used to this stuff, and I promise with time you'll get better and better and faster at using all these little classes and all these little fields that they've got available. When you get a feel for it, you can even start guessing the API and quickly scaffold stuff like this. And it's so much fun. I really love this framework. But anyway, we've got a couple of more things that we have to cover. So let's jump right on and move ahead. And the next thing is going to be position-related stuff. And that's got to do with how this menu is shown. So we can actually make it show at different points, which might make sense. For example, if it's sitting in the bottom left and you want to make it show in the top right of the button, and you want to have a little bit more control over that. So let's come up here to our drop-down and start exploring what we can do. First of all, notice that it shows at the bottom here. You can also make it so it covers this button entirely by adding the word cover. And now when I open the menu, it covers that button. So that's really handy to know, but you might want even more control. And to do that, you can say menu-anchor. And actually, before I go into this, I want to give you a rundown of how anchoring with menus works. So let me just pull this up, something I prepared earlier. So in this example, this is the menu, this is the button, and if we have the anchorage for the button set to top right, and if the menu anchor is set to top right, I might even put some text here, menu-anchor, and then over here we'll set this to menu dash self. So if the menu anchor is set to top right, which would be right there, and the menu self is set to bottom left, then we can kind of line those 2 points up like this. And that means when you open the menu, it will show like that. And now if we set this, for example, to, what's another good example? How about bottom right? In that example, in that case, it's here, and the menu would show like that. And then one last example here, if we set this to bottom right, then it would be like putting this over to the bottom right there, and the menu would end up covering the button and showing like that. Okay, so that's how menu anchor and menu self work. So I'll just cross out of this now, or I'll bring it down to my bottom screen, and we can have a play with this using a real world example. Let's set menu dash anchor equal to bottom dash, or we don't want to put a dash in there, so bottom space right. And that means the anchor is going to be from the bottom right here. And then let's set menu dash self, so the reference point for the self, to top dash right. Save it. And that didn't work because I put a dash in here. That needs to be a space. And it's probably better to set this to top left. That might be a better example. So the bottom right of this button and the top left of the menu, and there we go. And if we want to basically recreate the cover example we had, then we could set this to top left, so we'll leave that as is. And then we want to throw it to this point here on the button, which would be top left as well. So top space left, put the P in there. And there we go. Now it covers the top left. So you can have a play around with that. Oh, let me just give you one more example here. If we say top left for the menu anchor and we say bottom right here, in other words, we want it to be positioned here, and then the menu will kind of cover the top of the screen. What's going to happen is it will automatically adjust it for us. So basically, Quasar is realizing that this is not going to be completely visible, and so it sets it to a different position for us. And just to prove that, if I come here and create a div, and then let's put a style in there that's got a margin top of 300 pixels, just to push things a little bit. And there we go. Notice that it actually works now. So Quasar is going to be really smart about making sure that this is always visible, so you don't have to worry too much about making this work on mobile devices. Now, one last thing that we can change is the offset. So notice at the moment it sits right on the correct position, point to point. Now, if I come in here and I say menu dash offset, and we set that to an array, let's say 30, 30. Open the menu, and it's just going to put a bit of an offset in there. I've never used that before, but it's good to know anyway. Let's bring things back to normal and move right along. Almost there. I just want to cover events now. So we have an event for clicking. However, we've got a few more events as well. And let's just create a logger component here. So if I come down here and we say logger, sorry, not component, this is a logger method, console.log woo who. And now we can call that method just to check if events are being fired. And now we've got a few events that we get for the Q button drop down. We can say @show. So if I open up the menu here and we call the logger, once the menu has shown, it will log. However, notice this. Notice that it happens after the menu showing animation. So if I click on this and say click, click, notice that it takes a second for the console log to appear. Click. Because show will wait until the animation is done. So what we can do is say before show, if we want that to appear straight away. Click. And then that console.log is going to happen earlier. So we have total control here, which is really cool. We can also say hide. And once again, that's going to wait till the animation is done. Click. Notice that it takes a second before it's shown. And now we can say before-hide. And this can be useful if, for example, clicking on an item within your menu takes you to another page, you might want the animation to show first and then you're taken to the page, just to create a slightly better user experience. So click, and straight away in this example, it's going to console.log. And the last thing is some methods that we have available. So let's come in here and say ref. So the reference here will be equal to toggle button, or let's say button toggle, button toggle. I'm going to copy that, come up here and create another button. Q dash button. Now this will just be a normal button. And then at click. So when this is clicked, I want you to grab that reference. So we'll say refs button toggle. So now we have a reference of this component here. And I can tell it to do stuff like show, for example. And by the way, let's put a little bit of margin in here. Q dash margin or extra large, just so they're separated. And let's put a label here saying show. And now if we click on that, I'll just get rid of that. It's going to show the menu. So that gives us a little bit of extra control. And if we have show, of course, we also have hide. Let's set that to hide. Open the menu and then hide. Now this is a bad example because if I click away anyway, it's going to hide. So what we can do is say persistent here. When I click away, it will not hide, but this button will hide it. So that's just a useful little thing to know. And the last one is toggle. And it's pretty obvious what that one does. That will toggle it on and off. And that is everything that the Q button drop-down component has to offer. It's a super handy component, and I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you. See you in the next one, where we're going to dive into another component.